And we're back. Welcome back to the MobilityWOD. We're going to continue our third day of discussing kind of shoulder relationships. How to understand the shoulder as a complex joint, but mainly as kind of a series of relationships. First we said, hey, you've got to keep the rib cage down and torso organized. Check. Second, we kind of discussed the relationship of scapula to thorax. Check. Then we start talking about the relationship of kind of the musculature of moving the arm within that kind of whole complex. And maybe even move the scapula a little bit, or just moving the arm as it relates to the shoulder a little bit, like the big movers, the lats, etc. Tonight, the last piece is kind of the relationship of the arm to the shoulder itself. And this kind of, if you think about the rotator cuff, basically sits within the scapula and steers that shoulder joint around and guides it and creates tension and limits excursion and supports the joint capsule. But really it's the joint capsule in there that kind of relies for a lot of the integrity of the joint socket. One of the problems with kind of being in a disorganized setting is that shoulder blade comes forward and over the top of the joint, or slips forward 30 degrees like most people in bad positioning, is that one, as I get the impingement, check, we understand that. I sandwich all the beautiful tissues into the top of the roof of the scapula. But two, as soon as I flip the car upside down, basically on top of the driver, the rotator cuff becomes in a weak position. It gets positionally inhibited. It's long, it's stretched out, the insertions become friable. That's really the mechanism for why a lot of these rotator cuff tears happen. And then, of course, missing, having a really, really tight tolerance and then flying through it is how I tear a labrum, for example. So there's kind of two mechanisms, but we've repositioned that already. But maybe we can actually do some repositioning and change the relationship. It's harder to change a joint capsule, but it's certainly possible by yourself. And, so here's the kind of the three pieces that I tend to think of when I think about kind of the shoulder joint capsule piece that I can change myself. And the first one is kind of mobilizing somehow an internal rotation. You can, getting into this capsule at some point or in some way or fashion, really you have to do it internally, and it feels more like capsular stuff. We keep hitting the partner internal rotation stretch. I think that is a good one. Spending somehow getting your hand behind your back. This is a recent one that someone at the seminar was showing. They basically were able to get the shoulder back in the socket. Remember, we want to try to mobilize in a good position. So using a band pulls my shoulder back. I can put that hand behind my back and grab it, and I'm not worried about ending up in the douchebag shoulder position because the band keeps me back. And then I can go ahead and use my other arm to internally rotate, pull across a little bit more, a deduction, a little more extension, kind of keep hitting those corners. I can turn away, and that's a pretty ugly little stretch there. I can just oscillate back and forth. That really feels deeply capsular, and you'll find you're like, what am I mobilizing? There's not a lot of musculature here. Certainly could be the capsule. And then that retest is pretty evident what you've just done with that thing. So that corner, that's for internal rotation. Obviously for working on flexion, we talked about trying to get the shoulder to the back of the socket. And so that's homework number 1 tonight. Homework number 2 for 2 minutes each arm is to try to go ahead and do our favorite distraction, where we work on getting that arm distracted out in this position, using the band to try to get a little bit of lateral distraction in the joint capsule, then taking that kettlebell straight up, setting the shoulder blade out of the way and down. I pin the arm, set the scapula back, and what I'm trying to do is drive the head of my shoulder into the ground. And just hanging out here and then working on internal rotation as I kind of get to the back of the capsule there, just rotating back and forth. Hit that for as long as you can. Some of our athletes can only do it for about 10 seconds or so. See if you can cultivate some time, look at the difference between kind of that plane overhead and what you've done. Remember, we don't consider a joint normal until you have full range of motion in all ranges. So if you find out you're missing a big chunk, think of your joint as not healthy, right? And it's going to, that lack of space or capacity is going to reflect itself somewhere else. In the kind of armpit area is really the only place where you can kind of start to see that kind of deep internal rotator cuff musculature. You maybe can catch some of the subscap. Triceps are here, lats are here, but it's definitely worth once in a while exploring in this period, this piece. This subscap can certainly get tight and limit the capacity of the arm to translate forward in the socket. So I can camp out in here, my ball roll back and forth. It really feels deep and strange in this area. Obviously, if you go numb or hand tingles, stop. You're probably on your brachial plexus. But this area right here is a real tight bit. And as you come up that last little range, the arm needs to actually spin forward a little bit in socket. That's that last bit that we need to translate. And if I'm tight here, it's hard to get that forward. So sometimes smashing that can make a difference. Lastly, I would say, or second to lastly, or lastly, is doing our favorite, where we loop up into a triple, working on that extra rotation of that capsule. This is deeply capsular in nature. So set yourself up, 3 loops with 1 band. Stick your arms through there. People at work are wondering what you're doing. You know, you're getting better and faster while they surf YouTube. Wind this bad boy up this way. So you're going to go as far as you can. Oh, you see how I spread the hands out? Then I spin around. I can set my shoulders back and spin around in external rotation. And it's pretty gnarly, right? I get a pretty good external rotation in the back of the socket. I can walk over to a sink and then start to back out over my head. And I'm not sure what that is. It's going to feel like gristle, but that is the real deal there. Catch a little neural tension if you can. So those are some ideas tonight about thinking about kind of home remedies between setting the relationship of the arm to the shoulder blade. Lastly, some questions have come up on the site about how do you convert video. We'll put up a link. Someone else in comments put up a little tool on Firefox. And then I think there's KeepVid, KeepVid.com, KeepVid.com, allows you to drop into a URL and converts it, especially built for YouTube videos. And then finally, I'll tell you that you need to keep worrying these tissues. If you want to make change, think about the 23:59 rule. It means if you mobilize for 1 minute and then go back for 23 hours and 59 minutes, nothing's going to change. Your tissues are like obedient dogs. They will always come around. Always. You have to just be consistent. I was working with one of our friends who's a ballet dancer today. He was like, good God, Kelly, in 3 years you've changed your flexibility tremendously. So I'm telling you, it can be done. You just have to believe it's going to get done. All right? We'll see you guys tomorrow.